You just either paid for a training or you're deciding to do a training for your team or for your company, and you want to know, is it worth the investment? Did you get your best bang for your buck? And there are three ways that you can think about trainings in general. And of course, we're a public speaking company, so we're going to use public speaking trainings as an example. And there's three different tiers that we've created. One is thinking about it at a mental, emotional framework. Another is thinking about it more at the behavioral level. And the other is at a cultural company level, organizational level. So the very first one is a mental and emotional. So immediately after the training, could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes after, or within 24 hours while it's still fresh, you can have the employees or the participants talk about how did they feel about their experience. Was it a good use of their time? And what we call it is spouse-worthy moments or significant other moments, which means that when they go home after they do the training, do they go to their partner and go, hey, Chaz, I just learned this thing at this training that I just did. Let me tell you about it. And they can share a specific piece of knowledge or a framework or anything that they can talk about. So it's the intellectual understanding, the analytical understanding of the material. And the other side is, of course, the instructor. Do they feel that they were helpful, that they were qualified? And this is where you get a sense that, okay, the participants walked away and they went, that was a good use of my time. I'm glad I spent my 4 hours or 8 hours or whatever I did instead of being at work. I'm glad that I was there, because that's what you want as a manager and as a team lead. You want to make sure that your employees walk away feeling that way about the training.
It's awesome. It's always funny when I go back home from a really good training. I'm usually pumped, so that's a good sign. And I'm talkative, and my wife sometimes doesn't even believe that I was at a training. Were you at a party? No, I was at training. And that's a sign of a good training. And like you said, Rahul, that's the first level that you want to assess a training on. Does it evoke intellectual curiosity and understanding and also good positive emotions? And usually it's done by a survey to the team after the training.
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
We'll be sharing that with you. We'll be sharing that in the post that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just really seeing the excitement after the training. Do you feel lit up by it? Are your employees' faces happy from it, or is it that's good, that's good?
Hey, it's good. It's not bad.
Yeah,
it's like horrible. It was horrible. That you don't want to see that.
No.
I did a facilitation class or something years ago, and I did what you just did. Chaz, my manager, asked, "How is it?" And I didn't really like it very much, and I was like, "Yeah, it's okay," because I knew that it was a lot of money, and that I didn't want to tell her that I didn't like it. But I was like, yeah, okay. And then she was like, she dug a little bit, and she's like, "So really, tell me, was it a good use of your time?" And I was like, I don't know. I think I could have just read it in a book, and it wasn't really. I didn't really feel like I practiced, or it wasn't really behavioral. So, which leads us to the second tier.
Yeah, exactly. So moving into the second tier is really to assess the skills that were learned from it, and not from an excitement or intellectual. Those are both very important pieces. That's really that first area. And then the next area is the skills, the behavior. Are you seeing a lot of what was taught in the training implemented from a day-to-day, let's say maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month after the training? Are you still seeing those skills that were taught in there start to develop more? Maybe a little bit of practicing, pushing it. So again, just using the example of public speaking, given we're a public speaking training company, would be to assess, are they more clear in their presentations? Do they have a better delivery in their presentations? Really depending on, hey, was it a focus on messaging? Was it a focus on delivery? And whatever area of focus that was on, are you seeing that come out of the training itself? So do they feel more comfortable just from how you're looking at them, or even ask them if they feel more comfortable, and really having that stickiness to it, that, after day one or day two of the excitement maybe wears off, are those skills sustainably increasing? So that's really what you want to look for. And again, just doing an assessment post training for something like that's really good. You can go down below, find the link to our blog of really getting that whole assessment. But having a set questions, the questions will change depending on what kind of training it is. For example, the public speaking training, you'll have certain questions. Other training, you'll have different questions. So really just making it precise to what it is. And then making sure to come back to it that month later and really looking at it and saying, wow, I'm seeing 7 out of 10 of my employees are implementing at least 1 or 2 things from that training. Let's consider maybe bringing that back and deepening those skills again. Or, hey, I'm not seeing anything from that. Maybe I just want to ask them and see what they're getting from it. So is it visible? Is the behavioral change visible even a month afterwards?
Right. Super, super important. That's why we're adding this second tier, because we've all been to trainings where we're like, oh my God, I can tell, I could, those significant other moments you can go back and share, and you're excited, and the feeling and the knowledge is there, the mental frameworks are there. But then I know for myself, weeks later, a month later, I think and I go, oh, I'm not really implementing what I learned. It was more intellectual, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's useful. But we're adding this second tier because we know that, especially with something like public speaking or a lot of behavioral skills that you're probably teaching to your employees or to your team members, you want that behavior to shift, those habits to shift. Remove the negative habits, add in positive habits for them. So super, super important. The other thing I was going to add too is that I'm proud to brag about this, one of our long-term clients said that whenever they ask them, they do a behavioral test maybe a month or a couple months out with the employees that have been to a recent presentations training or public speaking training with us. And she was mentioning that they start doing, as they're speaking, they start doing some of the techniques. And one of the team members in their HR department was like, oh, and they always start moving around and walking and doing this thing. Is that something you taught them? Because they look very structured and confident when they're speaking. I was like, oh, that's a technique called anchoring. And that's when we know that it's really stuck, that the behavior stuck so much that when they're talking naturally, it's just happening on the fly. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that tells us they're implementing is when we talk to managers and they start using the language, they go, oh, I saw some of my employees anchor today. I saw some of my employees engage with enrolling questions. I saw some of my employees do hyper-end to explain something that's abstract and make it seem tangible. And that's music to our ears. And that's what we look for as a company, because we believe that learning happens when behavior change. That's when learning really happens.
Awesome.
And that leads us, of course, to the third tier of training assessment, and that's the cultural assessment. Because, of course, you want to engage people intellectually, you want to change their behavior, and you start really reaping the impact as an organization when it's integrated within the culture. And for this one, what you want to do is do assessments to evaluate the quality of meetings. For example, if you did a public speaking training, you do evaluate the quality of meetings, presentations overall in the company. And also you start looking for the infusion of the language and the techniques as a company level. Like one time we did a training for a big consulting firm, and after a month we went back to revisit so we can do another training for them. And we witnessed their morning routine where the whole company, they gather up. There's like around 40 of them, and they form a big circle and they share things. And we stood with them, and all of a sudden they started playing a game called Zip, Zap, Zop. I don't know if you guys know what Zip, Zap is. It's like Zip, Zap, Zop. It's a public speaking and improv game. And I was blown away because we taught them that the month before. And now it's part of their culture because they're our learning organization. And when I see something like this, I said music to my ear. This is even more music to my ears when I see our trainings being integrated at a whole company level. And that's the third tier of evaluation. First tier is intellectual, emotional. Second is behavioral. Third is cultural. And also, if you want tips on how to do this evaluation, make sure you check the link below or visit our blog and do a quick search on post-training evaluation, and we'll help you do that.
Yeah, I love the organizational change part of it, because then it's really implemented as just a life and blood of the company, and it really becomes so much bigger, and it changes the mentality of the organization to more of a learning and growth oriented mindset, and the whole company really just gets shifted in a little bit of a different direction. Even if it's a tiny little shift, that's it. Those tiny little shifts over a long time are really what make companies truly stand out and be great.
That's right. Yeah, one of the tests too is looking if it's become a learning organization over time. Are employees and managers looking for more professional development? Are they looking for growth? Are they prioritizing growth versus other priorities in the company as well, or is at least just as important as those other skills? And that's another way to tell if it's infused, or what we call it, injected into the operating system of the company, where people are valuing that just like anything else.
Awesome. So I know doing the cultural change is a big step, and it doesn't have to start that way. You can always start with the intellectual and then move it to behavioral, and then over time you should check if it's changing the culture. That's why we recommend the cultural surveys to be done every 6 months or every year, because it takes time for the infusion.
That's right.
Awesome.
Good.
So those are the 3 tiers that you can look at when you're evaluating a training for your team, or when you've already paid for your training, to make sure that it was worth the investment. And all 3 tiers are, of course, important and have different timescales that you want to evaluate it. Just don't fall into the trap that you only evaluate at the mental, intellectual level right after the training, because like we said, you can have gone to a training and everyone feels good, but the behaviors don't stick. Or if the behaviors stick, then it doesn't change at the company organizational level. And of course, that's a large goal to have, but we want to push companies and push you to be thinking about how you can change your individual employees, your teams, and the company at large, because that's really why you're doing the job that you're doing. So check out the assessments for each of the areas that we have below, and see you in one of our trainings.